them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me.
Welcome to Pulp Mythos and the Kurt Russell-A-Thon. We will be reviewing Kurt Russell movies for the month of August 2020, and today we'll be talking about Soldier. But before we get started, please subscribe, hit that bell so you'll be notified of all the content when it drops, including the rest of the Kurt Russell-A-Thon. We're trying to hit 100 subs before September 1st, and we are very close to that goal. Thank you for that. And here we go. Spencer. I'm joined with Spencer. I'm Brian. And yeah, Soldier. We were talking a few minutes before we started recording. You don't recall if you saw this back in the day, or?
I don't remember. I might have. This was around the same time as a lot of other movies that were kind of similar were coming out, and I don't remember. I know he just looked like Guile from Street Fighter, and I'm not 100% sure. It is a possibility. I watched a bunch of movies and rented them from Hastings, and that was my choice, not Blockbuster or Hollywood. I was always at Hastings, but I rented a lot of movies back then, and I don't remember it. Nothing stood out until I watched it this time around, and there was a lot of parts that did stand out, so I'm going to say no, I didn't.
I watched this movie. It was around 2000. It was the movie came out in 1998 October. I saw it around 2000. I only know that because I remember who I was with when I rented it, and so I remember renting it, watching it, and it became one of those movies where I rented it like 2 or 3 different times. You know, it was like, and it all revolved around. I wanted to show my friends the last 30 minutes. I was like, oh, there's all these explosions and it's this crazy battle, and so that was the thing that always stuck out for me with this movie, was just how over the top the action was, because it's interesting. It's an R-rated film, but it's really there's no sexual content, there's no nudity, there's not really much in the way of gore or blood. There's a little bit. It earns there isn't even really any profanity. It literally gets the R rating for violence, just over the top violence, and the scenes. And I include the scenes when they're shooting civilians, which I'm sure is probably the reason it got the
yeah.
But yeah, Soldier. So this movie has a very, very interesting writing and directing team. It was directed by Paul Anderson, or Paul W.S. Anderson. That's the guy that directed Event Horizon, the Resident Evil films, the first Mortal Kombat film. So did you know that? I didn't know. We hadn't talked about it.
I looked it up afterwards because, I didn't remember much about the movie. But then when I saw the Event Horizon movie that I love that movie. But
yeah, we'll have to talk about that one day in depth.
Well, horror's coming up. Shit.
Yeah, that is true.
But yeah, I didn't know until I looked it up and was not necessarily surprised after seeing the film, because it kind of had that weird, like, dark, kind of ominous feel to it. But so it didn't surprise me, but I didn't know. I didn't know who was involved.
The writer, and this has spurred a few conversations online, and I remember hearing about this years later. David Webb Peoples. I don't know if I'm saying the last name correctly, but anyways, he's the guy that co-wrote Blade Runner, the first Blade Runner film. He wrote a bunch. I think he wrote Unforgiven, or like if I'm not mistaken, he wrote like a lot of cool movies. But he co-wrote Blade Runner, and there was a rumor or speculation that Soldier, the way it was written, I think if I'm not mistaken, I didn't do the research for this review like I should have, but I want to say there's a reference in the movie on one of those monitors at one point that basically says that this movie could be in that universe. Like, there's nothing in it that would prevent it from being in the universe. It's almost like a soft side film to the Blade Runner films.
Well,
and I remember reading that.
there has to be reference for something to not be a part of a universe. Shit, you could say Event Horizon didn't say nothing that it wasn't a part of Blade Runner universe.
You make a good point.
Grand Central Hotel or whatever the fuck the movie's called. You just said Anderson. That just reminded me of Wes Anderson. Grand Budapest. There it is. That's what it was. But no,
actually,
it had a similar feel to it. And like, because me and you had talked about this before too, about how in Blade Runner, they made references to soldiers like this. So it still could have been, like you said, a tie-in kind of, but not necessarily a tie-in. If you look at, I equate it to kind of like Disney movies where, I've been forced to watch several of them, but I enjoyed Tangled. I thought it was funny. Frozen, not so much, but they do reference things from Tangled and Frozen. So it's, one of those things where it could have been in the same time frame universe or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
I'm looking here on the official like Blade Runner wiki. There's a whole article on it. It states, I'll read this really quick. Writer Brian Peoples, I'm probably saying that wrong, considers the film to be a spin-off sidequel to Blade Runner and contains a handful of references to it. However, beyond this, it has not been recognized as part of the Blade Runner franchise. So it's unofficially there. I think is the best way to describe.
Yeah,
But
so
I always thought that was cool.
So he wrote this movie in the intent to be similar to Blade Runner, but just not necessarily completely biting off of it at the same time.
Yeah. Let's get into what this movie is about. The thing that's interesting about Soldier is it's not plot heavy. It's
You
not
don't say.
dialogue. It's not dialogue heavy. It's and I say this in a nice way. It's a shell of a movie. It's designed for one purpose and one purpose only, that final 30 minutes. This movie is built with the intent of having an insane over the top action sequence that spans about half the film. That's it. There's no, and it's a one man army. They basically wanted to do Rambo in space, and that is the whole thing. They didn't. The characters are underdeveloped. There, like I said, there's not a whole lot of story here, but it works. This is the kind of movie that, if it's late at night, you're just chilling. It's on. Maybe it's 30 minutes into the movie, and you're like, oh shit, I'll finish watching Soldier.
Yes, it's very much you don't really need to know what happened during well, I would always suggest watching the first. You can miss oh, Jesus Christ. Somebody came to the door. But, I mean, you could miss the middle 30 minutes and it wouldn't matter.
That is true. You really could. So the film revolves around a super soldier program. That's what I'll call it. It has, I think it's Project Adam or something. It's referenced in the very beginning of the film. And basically it's I don't know if it was selective breeding or they just were selecting children based off who their parents were. Not really sure about that, but basically they select a bunch of infants. They enroll them in this program. They take them and they're trained, they're trained to watch horrible things. They're trained to fight. Their endurance is tested. And the one scene, and I think I texted you or called you, the one scene that
Yes.
I remembered that stuck out was the kid that was lagging behind. Because I remember when I first saw this movie, I kept thinking, damn, that would have been me. Like, he's lagging behind the group that's running, and they just straight up shoot him. They're like, yeah, no, he's not up to par as far as what they're looking for.
Well, the beginning sequence when they were picking babies, there were certain babies that were crying. So those are the ones that I don't know if they were choosing them, because it seemed as though the ones that were crying were the ones getting chosen for this program, which I thought was odd because I don't know if it was like a test to try and get that out of them, make them to where they're these hardened soldiers, or if they were picking them because, like, I don't know if, like you said, this was like a breeding program, and they were letting all the other ones live, and these guys were basically thrown to the scraps, and they were expendable because they were babies. Like they were, crying and whining, and they saw them as the not fit Spartans, so they were trying to
Yeah.
build them up. I don't know. But
Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, like, they showed a lot of different, like, all the tests I loved when they were like year 5, and they're fighting dogs, and they're getting gored by this boar, and then they're putting that little puzzle together, little arrow puzzle, and then putting guns together. It was cool to see how fast they were able to do it. Now, obviously, it was staged, but still, it's impressive, and it was cool to show that they went from basically being babies to soldiers by the time they were teenagers.
And once they became soldiers, it jumps ahead. It was 30 something, like 35, 36 years, something like
I think it
that.
was like year 38 or 36.
Yeah, so they're approaching 40, and it's showing we're getting a little highlight of all the wars they fought in, and just how effective they are as a unit, how brutal they are. Yes, they're given a mission, they're given a task to complete in at any means. If it requires killing all the civilians, so be it. And we get to see that we're introduced to the main character. Obviously, this is the Kurt Russell. So he is the star of the show, and he plays Todd, which I love the name. He plays Todd 3465, and they have their names tattooed on their faces with their rank. They have their battles tattooed on their arms. They are a soldier. That is their whole purpose of being, and he is clearly the one that is sort of the leader of the pack. He's leading these battles, and we see all the scars on his face, all the things that he went through. And like I said, I like the way that it was all shot. It was to the point, they were just jumping right in.
Yeah, I did like. I mean, it's always funny to me because, I when they refer to military ranking, a lot of times you see it more like police ranking. In movies, they always say, sergeant so and so, and I'm like, a sergeant is only, I think, if I remember correctly, the third rank up out of, for that rank, the enlisted. I think it's 8 or 9, and that's like the third. So them being like, he's in charge, he's a sergeant. I'm like, he's pretty low on the totem pole.
It's a familiar. You're right. It's a familiar term, and there's a lot of sergeants.
Yes, I
So
mean,
I think
it's
that's why.
police, like, yeah. So they just use it as a familiar term. But I did like how they had all the battles, tattooed on them, the numbers and everything. It was, there was a couple sequences, like you said, the killing civilians. They also show while they were training, they're shooting the like dummies, and Kurt Russell's character shot through one of the targets, which was a like civilian, to get to the enemy. And it was funny because that was a foreshadowing, because was like 4 sequences later he did that.
Yeah.
And it was really cool, like you said, the space stuff. They were wearing different outfits, different suits. They wore a space suit at one point to try and wherever it was that they were at, and they shot up the other guy's spacesuit and he died. So it was cool to see the different terrains and different things that they had to, encounter.
My favorite is when they're on the moon. It's like something battle of a moon, and they're like sort of floating around and shooting. So the conflict of the film, which comes in, we're introduced to a character named Colonel. I have it typed up. Colonel Makem.
Colonel Malfoy.
Yeah. Yes. Malfoy's father, or the villain from The Patriot. And I should mention that Gary Busey plays a character named Church. He's the one who runs the program with the soldiers. So this colonel comes in, and he's got these new soldiers, and they were genetically engineered. They haven't been battle tested yet. They're still young, but he's basically touting that they're better than the other soldiers. There's a lot of logic gaps here. It's not something you should think too hard about watching this movie. The fact that you would have this other program that they wouldn't know about it, that you would want them competing against each other. I mean, I don't know. There's, like I said, there's some logic gaps, but doesn't matter. His troops, he wants to prove they're better than the other ones, and so they put their two best men, Todd and Kane, who is played by Kane is played by Jason Scott Lee, who played Bruce Lee in the Dragon, the BruceLee story movie.
That's what I thought it was, but he
Yeah,
looked too big.
no hair. He's shaved in this film. Yeah.
Well, and he was a little bulky. I didn't remember him being that big.
He was jacked in this movie. So he is the elite soldier. So him and Todd or Kurt Russell have to do first they do a run. They do a bunch of little obstacle things. Then they do a run, and then they have to battle each other on these chains. And they send two other of Kurt Russell's crew up, and Kane kills them. And then Kurt Russell is able to jack him up. He rips his eye out before being knocked down the chain sequence. I love the chain battle. It's a really cool scene.
It reminded me of American Gladiators.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it was out during that time.
Another logic gap, not only, why did they not check the vitals of, say, Todd? Like, they didn't have a nurse run over.
He fell and they were just like, oh, well.
Yeah, like I said, it don't think too hard watching the movie. But they basically take him and the other two guys and they just drop their asses on a trash planet.
Well, my favorite part is that he was almost dead for, I don't know, like 14 hours, I guess. And then he just woke up and was like, oh, my God.
And he's he's strong enough to make it to the settlement. But yeah. Why did they not check him? How did they not know that was the planet that they dropped him on? Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of questions, but as I said, it's not the point of the movie. So then he ends up getting on this trash planet, and he discovers this settlement of people, and they quickly go through the backstory. Basically, they were on a ship. It crashed on this planet. They couldn't get anyone to come rescue them, so they built a settlement and organized a little peaceful existence. And it then became a dump planet, so there's trash always dumped on it.
My thing is how long were these people here to basically have this planet
build all that shit?
Trash planet.
Oh yeah.
Taking old downed planes to turn them into houses and stuff, and nobody know. Like so you're telling me that none of these trash barges, these space barges, came through and were like, holy shit, there's like this plane that moved and it's over here now.
There's a throwaway line where they sort of say that, where she's like, Sandra, who's one of the main characters, says either they're unmanned or they just don't care. They see us and they don't care. So like literally a quick little line when she's talking to Kurt Russell. He's living with a family. There's a little boy who doesn't speak, and then his father Mace and mother
Windu.
Sandra. Yeah. And it's a very awkward throughout the entirety of the film between Todd and Sandra, because she has a husband and they seem, to be into each other and a nice little happy family. But Todd is staring her down so much.
Like,
there's so many, dude, throughout the whole movie. The movie goes out of its way to be like, Todd is very much into Sandra. He's very much enjoys what he sees.
Well,
there's that musical sequence in the middle of the movie.
Well, it could be, anything. She was the one taking care of him. So when he first woke up, that was what he saw, who he saw, and not Stockholm syndrome because she wasn't keeping him captive, but, he may see her as, his savior, which isn't untrue, but it's just funny that, he's probably not around a lot of other girls and their unit was just nothing but a bunch of meatheads, and for him to, fall madly in love with this woman he saw for 30 seconds is almost rom-com-y.
This planet has one hellacious problem. These damn snakes. There's so many of these damn snakes. I cannot believe that they just have open houses and just windows open and shit. I would wage a campaign to burn and murder all these damn snakes because
It was like Australia. I mean,
it
it
was
was just a
dude.
bunch of deadly snakes everywhere, and everyone's just like, "Meh, they're snakes."
Exactly. That was what was killing me about it. Like it bit their son, and that's why he didn't speak. It almost killed him. It crawls in their bed at one point. Like there's just a lot of scenes with these damn snakes. It's in the gardens. Uh, yeah, I kept thinking that throughout the movie. I'm like, I don't know why you guys aren't out there massacring these damn snakes. And like they're poisonous.
Well, some of the snake scenes were my favorite because they were clearly like rubber snakes,
Yeah.
and there were several times where they picked them up and were like shaking them. Dude, I was fucking dying. It was for a movie that clearly had a decent budget with some of the stuff that happened at the end. For them to essentially have rubber snakes and have the actors try to pull them off as real snakes made me laugh. It was funny as shit.
Kurt Russell, there's a really nice sequence. This is where the conflict starts when Kurt Russell is training, and he's just, I don't know how old he was in this movie, but the dude was in killer shape. Like he's boxing that like a metal drum basically, and he's just beating the shit out of this thing, and it's doing this sort of flashback sequence. So you're getting, um, it's one of those scenes where they don't need any dialogue, but it tells you everything you need to know. You know, it's him beating the shit out of this metal drum. He's having these flashbacks. He's thinking about all the things he's done. You can tell he's trying to process the emotions he's been feeling while with these, peaceful community. He doesn't know if he can fit in. All this is processing, and then one of the people come to give him a gift because he helped them earlier in the film, and he almost kills them. He reverts to his fight or flight, and he almost kills the guy, and this leads to him getting exiled. I like that.
He was 47.
He was 47 during that scene?
Yes.
Holy shit.
During this movie. Well, I don't know if it took him a year to film it. He was 46, but I mean, still.
God dang. That makes me feel horrible. I gotta step my... Damn.
Well, and, there were still steroids back then, but a lot of the actors and stuff, I imagine that probably took a little bit more work and effort because, nowadays there's so much medical research on here, take this supplement and only eat chicken 3 times a day. And there's a lot more research now than there probably was in the 90s, but it's still quite impressive.
Yeah, he's jacked in this movie. But yeah, so great scene. Leads to his exile and a scene that's meant to be an emotional scene, but I laughed, and I remember laughing when I was younger and saw it when he's sitting in the barrel after he's been exiled and he starts crying. Because it's supposed to be, and he doesn't understand it because it's that moment where he's having emotions.
He doesn't know why he's crying.
He doesn't understand. It's one of those moments. But and that's basically the movie. Now the next part we're gonna talk about. There's just like only 2 things to talk about. Like that is the movie. There is a little side plot, and we'll talk about that right now. Sort of this back and forth conflict between Gary Busey and the Malfoy's father, which I enjoyed. I think Busey was quite good in this.
I thought so.
Yeah. They basically, yet again, plot doesn't completely make sense, but basically they're like, yeah, we're going to go to these planets that are in our sector and we're going to make sure they're clear. And if they're not, we'll kill everyone that's there. And that's literally what they say. So they go to the trash planet and they're like, oh shit, there's people. And they're like, all right, kill them all. So the colonel decides to use his new elite troops. And he's like, all right, we're going to do a little test run and have them go kill all these people. And they just start blowing shit up. And the Mace, who's married to Sandra, gets killed. How convenient for Todd.
Yeah.
Which was another thing I thought. I was like, how convenient. He gets to be the dad now.
Yeah, he's just like, oh no, I'm your dad.
So the battle, there's a couple. It's a pretty literally it's like 30 minutes. They do the initial attack, and let's talk about the sets and those tanks. They built they built all that shit. Like there are large, massive sets throughout this film. The settlement, the community, these big ass tanks. They had to make. Uh,
Well, and I was trying to picture what they were because I
yeah,
think
what
it
they
was
put
like
over top.
SWAT vehicles that they just put shit over top of, but it was very hard to tell what it was. I'm outside right now. It's not too loud, is it?
No.
Okay. I just make sure the dog like keeps barking, losing his shit because he just wanted to go out and play. So I have to multitask and throw a tennis ball while I'm sitting out here.
So that was the thing that was most impressive when you really sit back. Not only the ridiculous action sequences, but the fact that they built all that. And it's like, damn, for this little sci-fi action film.
Well, there were several like water parts and everything. So my curiosity was piqued as to did they build it near a pool? Did they have to dig a hole and fill it with water? Like how did they like a lot of those kind of things? I have questions as far as me being a, self-proclaimed cinephile where I just love movies, but that does kind of because I know with like Titanic, there's movie sets that are just giant pools. They fill them with water and stuff, but that clearly wasn't what that was. There's a lot of dirt and structures and everything. They didn't build something in a pool, but there was an awful lot of water too. So I was curious how they set that up.
There's a scene where they have like flamethrower guys, and they're in the water shooting, the flames over the water, and I kept thinking how stupid they were because they just landed on this planet. They haven't checked anything.
What happens if that's like methane?
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, how do they know that that's 100% H2O? Like there could be something else in there, and you're blasting fire all over it. I was like, yeah, that's pretty damn stupid.
I wonder if this is flammable. Let's check while we're standing in it.
Exactly, waist deep. So the big attack happens, kills most of the settlement, and we get a scene. Now this is pretty cool because there was a moment where you would think they're going to do sort of the cliche typical story where Kurt Russell's character, would take the who's left in the settlement, and he would train them, or they would be like, we stand by you, and we're gonna help you in this battle, and you think, you know what I mean? Like it sets all that up, but it never happens. Instead, he gets all these weapons, and Sandra comes to him, and she's like, "What are you gonna do?" And he's just like, "Soldiers deserve soldiers." And then he proceeds.
Well, like you said, you're assuming it's going to be like that episode of The Mandalorian where they teach everybody how to fight, and it's going to be this giant. Nope, it's just Kurt.
It literally, like, it sets all that up, but it doesn't do it. It says no. He literally spends the next 15 minutes of the movie massacring an entire army by himself. Almost like a horror movie. Like he hunts these guys down, brutally killing them one by one.
Well, was it Commando where like Arnold's coming out of the water a couple times with that face paint on?
He wore face paint in Commando. Rambo movies had it. Predator.
Yeah, I was thinking Commando or Predator. I couldn't remember which one, but it felt like that. Like that whole sequence. He's getting shot at, and he's like hiding in the water, and then he like stands up and shoots everybody. He's throwing knives, repelling from like these structures and shit. Like it's crazy.
He takes that one dude. He comes out of that shadow and stabs the guy through the eye with a big giant knife, and sets booby traps and like just all kind of stuff. It's crazy, and it's tons of explosions and gunfights, and he, like I said, he never gets assistance. He's just that never happens. It's just Kurt Russell kicking ass for like 15 minutes. I'm telling you, if you've not seen this movie and you're still listening to this review, just for the insanity of the action scenes, watch the movie. It's worth your time. If I had a son, I, and I don't care how old, if he was at least like 9, I'd sit him down and be like, "We're watching this."
Well,
It's just cool, you know.
there's not a lot of over the top sex scenes. There's
No,
not stuff
no,
like that, so it's
like
okay to show them people getting stabbed in the face as long as they don't see titties. I guess.
exactly. That's my rule. Now I'd show him Total Recall too. Um, so yeah, we have that big battle scene, and then Kane, which I mentioned earlier, is his nemesis. He ripped his eye out. They have the typical action battle at the end where it's pouring rain, and they're in the set. There's fires all around them, and they decide to have a big, blood sport type fight, one on one.
You say that, and that's exactly what I was equating the character to and everything. I was thinking Bloodsport the whole time. I was just hoping like Sean Claude would show up and just start whooping ass.
Well, he even does the move where he jumps and does the kick. It was very Bloodsport. And Kurt Russell outsmarts him because it's a cool scene. He's looking at a weapon and Kane looks to go for it, not realizing that there's this propeller blade above him, and he uses it to slice him open, and then he breaks his neck just like Superman did to Zod in Man of Steel. It's the exact same shot, actually. He even has that
Very
look
simple.
of sad. The Snyder watch this movie and is like, I'm gonna put that in Superman.
Probably. I mean, he's like, it's been enough time. That wasn't a huge blockbuster. Nobody's gonna know.
It was just a little nod to Soldier.
He's just a really big Kurt fan.
So after that, we have Kurt Russell. So the Colonel and Gary Busey are still battling, and then the Colonel dude kills Busey and decides he's going.
That scene was pretty awesome because he's, they are arguing back and forth, and instead of, finishing the argument, he's just like, "You coward," and he's just like, "Man," just pops him.
They have these weapons that can just blow whole planets up, and there's a great line where he's like,
Stars?
Yeah, they're like little bombs. And he's like, "Do you have any planet killers?" And they're like, "Yeah, we got 15." And I thought that was sort of a reference to how like the United States and Russia, it's not enough to have one nuke. Like they have thousands. Yeah. You don't need that many at all, but they have quite a few.
You have to have more than everybody else.
Exactly.
Legitimately, like what? 8 of them could destroy the whole Earth, but you need 2,000 of them.
Yes. So they decide they're going to deploy one of these, and Kurt Russell, which I didn't mention earlier, but like I said, there's not a whole lot of plot here. His original crew are still there. They're just not fighting. They're no longer being soldiers. And so one of them, Riley, he's named. It'd have been interesting if we got a little bit more from Riley's point of view, but he pops in. He's in like 2 scenes, and he ends up basically joining with Kurt Russell. Clearly, Kurt Russell takes over the troops. They take the Colonel. They kick his ass off the ship. The settlers get on the ship, and they take off as the planet killer detonates, killing the Colonel and blowing the planet up. And that's basically the whole movie. The whole movie is... It's called Soldier, and the movie is as simple as the title. It's just about a soldier.
Well, I think towards the end too, they tried to, and that's what you're talking about. Like, don't look too deep into it because, like, towards the end, the kids because they rescue everybody. The planet still blows up, but they have everybody who survived on their ship or whatever. And the kid, is grunting around and walks up to Kurt Russell, and he just picks him up. And then they just, all right, let's go. I'm like, all right, so now he's this kid's dad. And
yeah. Yeah. That's the movie, and I wasn't joking when I said that there's like almost no dialogue. Kurt Russell only has a few lines in the entire film. It's mostly just him looking, and that's it. Kane only has a couple lines of dialogue. The bulk of the dialogue's Gary Busey and the Colonel guy. Like they're doing all the talking,
Well, so's the
and the husband and wife.
yeah.
They're doing some talking, but that's it. Michael Chiklis or Vic Mackey from The Shield. He's this sort of nerdy guy that is in there. I didn't even include him in my notes because I was like, there's really nothing to say. He made a scarf for Todd. It's like that was it. He survives the end. He's there.
Yeah. Well, my favorite thing is bless you. My favorite thing though is like his hair. I mean, I get that people go bald, but why would you have like a little tuft up front with like I don't know, it just reminds me of what you always see like in the old like war movies or like where basically the hat should be is where there's no hair. It's just like he grew hair around where a hat should be.
He realized that shortly after this movie.
Oh yeah, because the Shield was
shaved
what, early
it.
2000s.
Yeah.
Bald. Same thing was Fantastic Four. I think that was like 2001 or 2002, and he was bald in that. So
Exactly. So yeah, that's Soldier. Yeah, I hadn't seen it in so long, and I had a lot of memories, a lot of flashbacks. I told my dad, I was like, "Remember Soldier?" And he just sort of smiled. He's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Yeah, I just watched it. I hadn't seen it in many years." And yeah, it's as far as action goes, it holds up. Um, yeah, if you just want to see a bunch of shit blow up, check it out.
if you want to see an even better Michael Bay movie, because
Yes, actually.
well, I don't like Michael Bay, but uh, Michael Bay relies on like one-liners and blowing shit up. This movie did a better job of blowing shit up and didn't rely on any one-liners. So, although the plot was bullshit, so are all of Michael Bay movies. So,
Yes.
if you enjoy watching, Transformers or Bad Boys, you would enjoy this movie.
I would say, and I didn't think about this, this is Paul W.S. Anderson's attempt at making a Michael Bay movie. That's a great, yeah. Yes. Well, I think it's funny because you look at Event Horizon, it's like he made Event Horizon, and it's like, okay, he wants to do the sci-fi horror thing, and then this was, okay, I want to do the sci-fi action thing. So, he was, and both are very interesting. Event Horizon's a much better movie, but in my opinion. But I enjoyed Soldier. Yeah, Kurt Russell's just a badass in the movie. Yeah, that's all I can say. And it has, you can tell that when they made this movie, they were really trying to recapture the '80s. A lot of the action films from the '80s, like stuff.
Well, if you look at like this movie, you're thinking was late 80s, early 90s at the the oldest, but it's not. It's late 80s, early 90s. This movie is like almost in the 2000s.
It's almost like a tribute in some ways to those '80s action films. Like that's the way it's written, that's the way it's played. Definitely. Like I almost feel like that was probably the pitch or the idea is, hey, we want to recapture, the spirit of, sort of, a movie that would have come out in like '87.
Yeah, like you said, you're looking at the like a late 80s, or even I guess early 2000s, like Eraser and those kind of movies.
Oh yeah, true. So yeah, that's
specific genre.
Yes. Yeah, Eraser. Eraser is a movie that's all built around a gun.
Yes.
Like the whole plot is just about this cool gun. But yeah, that's Soldier. So I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Kurt Russell-A-Thon all August long. There's plenty more movies coming up. Anything else to say about Soldier?
The one thing I text you about, it made me laugh because when they had all the kids in there watching the uh, dogs getting killed by the boars or whatever. There was one kid on the bottom right. So if you ever watch this, keep an eye out for it. He does not look away from the camera. Like he stares a hole in the camera the entire time the camera's moving. And I couldn't stop laughing because everyone else is looking like towards the dog cages or whatever. And this kid's just eyeballing the camera the whole time. And I thought that was funny that no one caught that, or that they were just kids and they're like, fuck it, this is the best steak we got. We're just gonna keep this one.
Exactly. That's probably what it was. They were just like, yeah, that's good enough. But it's just fucking movie. It's a movie
It's
about
10 seconds of video of this
explosion.
kid. We'll be all right.
Yeah. But all right, yeah. Hope you enjoyed the review. If you've seen this movie and you have any thoughts on it, put it in the comments below. And all right.
We're gonna do a 17-part Tombstone review
Yeah.
for the rest of August.
Yeah, we are going to definitely do a lengthy Tombstone review. I'm planning on it being 2 parts, but it could be 3. We'll see. Because I typically, because I'm about to stop this video, 40-ish minutes is about proper length, I think. And I look at the analytics. Nobody really watches past 15. I'll say our audience viewership has gotten better. People watch longer.
So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. But all right.
Bye.
Bye.